Howdy, folks. I'm Brian,
I'm Amber.
and here's some Reddit. Although I guess I have the wrong background up right now. I should actually change this out to not a fall background anymore and probably get one of our winter backgrounds up because it's snowy here. Amber took some really nice pictures the other day, so maybe we should put those up. I know I said that about the fall backgrounds, and I'm a liar apparently. So, I guess let's get started. We got a good batch of stories for you today, so hopefully you enjoy them. Our first story is titled, Am I a Jerk for Sternly Telling My Wife That I Get to Invite Whoever I Want, Whenever I Want, to my house? My wife is a stay-at-home mom while I work full-time. We have 2 kids that I help do 50% of their care while she handles the cooking and cleaning and the other 50% of the child care as well. I am sociable by nature and I'm fast at making friends whether at work or outside of it. The problem is that my wife has it that I invite friends and coworkers and guests over every few days to my house for dinner or lunch. Restaurants aren't an option right now due to budget. My wife says that she has to cook for my guests, though I never tell her to cook this or cook that, nor ever complain about her choice of meals because it depends. The guests eat whatever she feels like cooking, yet she complains that she has to cook for extra people, which takes extra effort and time, and also since I sit with the guests, then she has to serve them by bringing them coffee, preparing the table, etc. Since I told her that I don't do these chores, but I thought that since this is her area of responsibility, then where's the problem? I invited a few guests for Thanksgiving, 6 people. Wow, a few. Few usually refers to 3. And when she found out, she lost it saying that I should have consulted her first. I said that there was no need because they would just eat whatever she cooked and it was no problem. But she said that she wasn't going to agree to cook for a large portion and for an extra 6 people aside from serving them and handling and hosting, it was just too much for her. I told her that she was making a big deal out of it and should just stop freaking out over a few extra plates and glasses and whatnot. Alright folks, I have to pause here for a second. This one's really hard to read. There's one period between in that whole massive block of text. I'm not making fun of their grammar. It's just sometimes people make interesting choices when it comes to writing. She said that she didn't agree, but then I eventually had guests over, and after they left, she started yelling at me and said that I was not her and my guest server, and that I should stop having them over. And that's when I told her very sternly that this is my house and I get to invite whoever I want whenever I want. And I called her unreasonable to react like that instead of being welcoming to these people who wanted to spend time with us, unlike her family who cut us off completely. But she shouted that she was done with being on my beck and call and having to be forced to take care of my guests in terms of serving and cooking, just because it's her part of the chores, and she told me if she wanted to continue to have guests over, then I would have to step up and cook for them myself, which I thought was quite rude and unfair of her. We went back and forth on this argument, and then she stopped talking to me and started giving me the silent treatment, making me feel like I committed some kind of sin by having guests over. I wanted to explain my wife's main issue. It isn't about cooking itself, but having to cook extra for guests, which is understandable, and I tried to compromise by suggesting that we set the limits for when my guests visit to avoid having to include them in dinners and whatnot, and also suggested that we limit the frequency of those visits, but she stated that she will still have issues with it and gave me options of either handling the hosting myself or just completely stopping having them over or take them out to restaurants, but then the restaurants consume money and she's the one who advised against going to restaurants. Also, the reason I said that it's my house, I meant that it's my house too, and not as if it's mine alone or hers alone. My wife has a huge part in it, and she definitely gets a say in what goes on and what doesn't, and we don't usually disagree except for this one issue. Alright folks, what do you think here? Do you think that OP is being the jerk or not in this situation?
Jerk, jerk.
Amber says he's being the jerk. I do understand OP's desire to have guests over and potentially, host them, but this needs to be something that both parties are mutually fine with. And I think that, it seems like OP's wife feels underappreciated in this regard, that she's doing a lot of additional work that's beyond the normal chore distribution. Like, if he's having people over a few times a week, then it might add a pretty significant amount to the, other things associated with cooking. Like if she's also doing the dishes, for instance, it sounds like she's doing all the chores. So when you cook for additional people, you don't just create additional food, you create additional mess. You also create, more dishes, and then you have to do more cleaning. And so this might be really adding a lot onto her chore list that I don't think OP necessarily sees because he's not part of that. So one thing that he might want to, talk about if he's really intent upon having people over is figuring out a way of lightening her load when it comes to these. And I think that her suggestion of like him doing some of the preparation and whatnot, I think is pretty reasonable in this situation. So I do think that OP is acting unreasonable. I think that he, the way he phrased things comes off quite poorly. And I mean, I do think that his clarification at the end does help to kind of allate some of my worries about the situation. But I think that when you invite an additional 6 people over for Thanksgiving, you really need to have a conversation with the person who's preparing that meal and make sure that they're okay with this. And I just think that OP did not do that in this situation. So I think that they're a jerk here. So anyhow, let me know what you folks think. Anyhow, take care and good luck. Bro, you're the jerk, especially if you aren't helping. And edit, please tell me exactly how you are 50% childcare parent when you have presumably a 40 plus hour a week job and are spending conservatively 4 to 8 hours a week entertaining guests. Because the only way the math checks out on that is if you count the hours you and your children are presumably asleep and count the hours the guests are there, which is extremely disingenuous, willing to bet that the children are sent to their rooms and aren't interacting with the adults. You're doubling up or tripling her workload and keeping a regular house while you sit on your butt, while expecting her to take up all the slack, meeting the expectations of a proper host. It's also apparent that you don't cook because there's a significant difference in cooking for, let's say, 4 people and cooking for 10 people. Just because they will eat what you cook doesn't mean that you haven't nearly tripled the amount of work that she needs to make, and then on top of that made it more complicated as many dishes take longer to prepare properly if you need to make larger quantities. Never mind all the dishes and extra work after the meal. Let me just guess that you don't help with those either. Seriously, if you don't understand the complexity of the work that she does, you can quiet yourself or do it yourself. Because I'm sure if she refused to feed your guest, you'd first decry how poorly she is behaving as a wife and hostess, etc. Oh wait, she did threaten that, and now you're decrying that it's her responsibility. Where do you think the, quote, food she is cooking comes from? Do you believe that she has powers of Jesus and is able to feed 10 people from the amount of food that would normally feed 4? Do you even know how to use the oven and stove? The sin isn't having guests over. The sin is not understanding the work that your wife does in the household and not understanding that while all you do is eat the food, how much work goes into preparing a meal, being a good host, and all the cleanup afterwards. And then, when your wife explains it to you, you being too much of a jerk to figure out that feeding all of your friends is a lot of extra work, even if she isn't changing the menu for the day. If you didn't have the ability to cook at her level for 10 plus people at a time, you would definitely be better off being quiet. Your wife is completely in the right here. Our next letter is titled, Am I the jerk for telling my husband exactly why I can't dance for him every night when I get home from work? Background, I'm a 35-year-old female and I'm married to my husband, a 37-year-old male, of 6 years and a working mother, nurse of 3 kids. We were at my in-laws' house for Thanksgiving dinner and every family member was able to make it. We were at dinner table when my brother-in-law started talking about his girlfriend's new fond hobby, which is dancing, and said that she has been dancing for him every night after she gets back from her Zumba class. The men in the family clearly got interested and they kept talking about it in details as me and the other women were just rolling our eyes. My husband then all of a sudden just threw his fork and looked at me and said, "Hey Jess, fake name, why can't you dance for me when you come home every night like brother-in-law's girlfriend does?" I was blown away by his question and really thought he was joking, but no. Looked around and saw everyone staring at me with my cousin-in-law sarcastically saying Dance Monkey Song or singing the Dance Monkey Song. I haven't heard that song, so I don't know what that is. I flipped out and said, "I don't know. Maybe it's because when I get home, I cook and then start my cleaning routine, then feed the kids dinner, then do the dishes, and then get our 8 months to sleep and clean the messy bathroom and bedroom, and then suddenly fall asleep the minute I get in bed from being exhausted from working on my feet all day long, then coming back home to a messy home and demanding kids and a husband. God, what a terrible wife I must be for not finding the time to dance." He froze in place, and then the entire table got quiet. Then my sister-in-law's jerk cop husband, who hates my husband's guts, started laughing, then said, "Good God, guess turkey. I mean, the chicken's really coming to roost, huh?" My husband's face was so pale. He just told everyone after noticing how awkward things got that he needed a minute outside. He got up and walked out, and I followed him, and he flipped out at me, saying great job in making Thanksgiving awkward and embarrassing him in front of his family like that. An argument ensued, and he said he wanted to leave after I caused him to be in an awkward position in front of the family. We got home, and he completely shut down. I stayed with the kids and couldn't sleep after that, and I called my mother-in-law, his stepmom, saying good on me for calling him out as he stepped out of line. But she could be biased since she hates his guts too. And I just feel guilty when I think about what happened, thinking I mishandled the situation and ruined Thanksgiving for everyone. Am I the jerk? Alright folks, what do you think here? Jerk or not the jerk?
Not the jerk.
You know, OP does a lot of stuff around the house, and then the husband decided that he wanted to have, his cake and eat it too, so to speak. And I think that was, I think OP's husband didn't appreciate what he had going for him. And I think that was pretty clear because suddenly, out of the blue, he's like, "Oh, why don't you do this for me?" in front of the entire family. Instead of having a private conversation and being like, "Oh, hey, honey, what can we do? This sounds like a really interesting thing. Is there anything I can do to help you so that you would be able to, dance for me every night," or something, like that. And I think that in this respect, I think that OP's husband really just did not appreciate what he had going for him. And when OP explained what she does, because she was called out in public, so she has to, of course, provide a response in public. And when she explained her point of view, her situation, he was embarrassed, and rightly so, because he embarrassed himself by not doing more around the house. And I think that's what's important to note here. OP didn't embarrass her husband. If her husband was actually pulling his weight, then he wouldn't have had anything to be embarrassed about, right? I mean, just plain and simple. But it sounds like OP is rather doing a lot of work around the house and also taking care of her husband, essentially. And while I'm not sure what he does, I mean, it doesn't sound like he's doing a lot just from that one summary. So it's hard to say. Anyhow, take care and good luck. Not the jerk, your husband's poor joke led to a response that he didn't like, and now he's butthurt. And OP replies, "That's what I thought at first. I thought it was a joke, but he was actually serious, and he was complaining about me not doing the same as his brother's girlfriend, who has no kids and no long-hour shift." Our next letter is titled, "Am I the jerk for ruining Thanksgiving dinner even though I was just defending my girlfriend from racist comments?" For a bit of background, I'm a 23-year-old male, and I'm white, and my girlfriend is a 22-year-old female, and she's black. My grandparents are extreme racists, and although it's just the two of them, they are the loudest, and will find any opportunity to let everyone know that they hate non-white individuals. Because of this, I am not that close to my family, especially my parents, as they have never said anything about it, and even laugh at their, quote, racist jokes. I don't go to family gatherings or parties because 1, my girlfriend is black and I don't want her to be subjected to straight up harassment by the racist family members. And 2, I don't want to be around racists and people who tolerate racism. A few weeks ago, my parents invited my girlfriend and I to my family's Thanksgiving dinner. This was a huge shock to us, as ever since my family found out that we were dating, they stopped contacting me and cut me off financially. I was a bit hesitant, but my girlfriend insisted that we go, as I have gone to her family's Thanksgiving dinner last year, and that if anything went wrong, we could just go home. We showed up, the majority of the family greeted her, but my grandparents stayed seated on the couch and refused to even look at us. When it came to dinner itself, my parents started asking my girlfriend what she did for a living, and just the typical get-to-know-you questions. My girlfriend told them that she was a college graduate and a registered nurse. My grandfather chuckled and said, "Of course it is." The table kind of got quiet. After that, even though I hadn't touched a single thing on my plate, I started gathering my stuff. Granddad said, "Are you seriously leaving?" No answer. You know, get your stupid slur for black people out of here. It was never invited anyways. My girlfriend ran to the car and I completely blew up on my parents and grandfather. A lot of family members were also defending her along with me, and some people just left. I told them never to talk to me again and that I would never be coming back to any other family gathering. My dad tried pulling me to the side to get me to calm down, but I blew up on him and my mom for even inviting me in the first place. They knew my grandfather would say something, and the fact that they weren't even defending my girlfriend when he said that made me mad even more, and I stormed out. My girlfriend and I just got home and we both calmed down. I apologized to her about everything, but I got a phone call from my dad. I thought he was calling to apologize for everything that had happened, but instead he yelled at me for ruining Thanksgiving dinner and told me that I overreacted and that I should have just left. You know, OP did just try to leave. They just try to leave. What is he even saying here? Because, like, OP literally was just gathering his stuff to leave. Like, he realized it was a bad idea. He was pulling his girlfriend. But then the grandfather pulled out the racist slurs. And it's like, are you serious? What reality is this dad living in? He said that I just made everyone hate my grandparents. Oh, yeah. Yeah, OP sure did. Sure he did. He made everyone hate his grandparents. And that they were born in different times, so I just let them be. Being born in a different time is not a pass for being racist. I've gotten texts from my mom and sisters telling me to come back and apologize to my grandfather. In my opinion, I did what I had to do in order to defend my girlfriend, but am I the jerk here? Did I overreact? Should I have just left? OP, you literally did just try to leave. Update, blocked my parents, sister, and grandparents, contacted everyone who defended my girlfriend, and we're planning on throwing another dinner on Saturday. I guess things turned out well in the end. Alright, OP, I'm glad that you realize here that you're not the jerk in this situation, and I'm glad that you're going to have a redo Thanksgiving with the people who actually are not jerks in this situation. What baffles me here is that, like, your grandfather acted completely out of line. Like, he could have just kept his mouth shut. He didn't have to say something rude. He could have just sat there in silence, which he should have. And the thing is that he was so invested in trying to make this an uncomfortable situation for her that he, made himself. Well, I mean, he was already a jerk here, but I mean that he had to, like, actually explicitly express his jerkiness. And now your father and your mother and the rest of your family is blaming you for making the situation uncomfortable. Look, OP, like I said, you were literally just standing up. Like, you started gathering your stuff, you started trying to walk out, but your grandfather took it to the next level. And you had every right to call them out on that situation. So, yeah, I don't think that you're the jerk in this situation, and good on you for, not tolerating that kind of behavior. Plain and simple. So, anyhow, take care and good luck. Not the jerk, your father and mother are equally on the same hook as your grandparents. I hope you see that. He may not be as overt, but as the Germans say, when a Nazi sits down at a table of 10 and nobody says anything, there are now 11 Nazis. Shout out to the other family members though. Hold your ground and do not apologize for a thing. Alright folks, that's all the time we have for today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, consider giving me a like. And if you didn't, consider giving me a dislike. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow.
Bye.